So I am Shardcore, Eric Drass, and I make art. I paint things, I make digital installations, contrast machine here, I make things that live on the internet, sometimes things that live in online and offline spaces. And today my talk is called Release the Wasps, so I'll just place these here. This is Vespula vulgaris, also known as the wasp, or the yellow jacket, or the jasper, or the flying shit. The wasp has many names, and perhaps they're best known for upsetting picnics. When Jane asked me to speak, she said, "What is your provocation going to be?" And I said, what the hell is a provocation? Do you want me to just bring a box of wasps into the room? And she went, "Yes, go for it. That's exactly what we want. We want to shake things up." So that's what I'm doing. So if we consider the picnic, the picnic is a social action that we do with other people that we think is going to be a good time. We think we're going to have a good time, we're going to have nice food, we're going to sit outside, but generally speaking, it's not really that much fun. Picnic is rather like our experience of social media. We've got a lot of defined things that we can and cannot do, places that we go and gather to do certain things that we're allowed to do with our online life. It's a bit boring. This is a painting by Henry Nelson O'Neill called A Picnic, and look how bored they are. This guy beside me has clearly almost fallen asleep, and his girlfriend's looking the other way. You know, no one here looks particularly engaged. In particular, this girl, who really is clearly having a terrible time. Picnics are shit. So, what I like to do is to see what happens when you release some wasps to a picnic, and suddenly you find the picnic becomes much more exciting. People run around, they discover new things. So I've laboured that metaphor far enough for now, and I'll talk about what I actually do. So I do things in the domain which I call algo-culture, which is the meeting point between humans and machines, of which there is a lot of stuff happening. It's where culture is happening in the real sense of the word. This is Victorian E.B. Tyler, who defines culture very nicely as that complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, yada yada yada. The habits acquired by man as a member of society. Keyword here being man. I would like to argue that it's not just humans anymore. There are machines getting involved. And when we talk about culture, I tend to think of culture as an organism. So rather than thinking of us as individuals with our culture of our own, what we do is we keep the cultural animal alive by instantiating it in ourselves. We're each of us a little piece of culture. We're each a little supporting machine for culture. And as a result, if we got our minds wiped tomorrow by some sort of intergalactic ray, culture would be gone. We'd be banging rocks together. There's nothing inherent in the human being that makes you a cultural entity. The culture is the organism. So to generate culture, generally what we do is we get data, ideas, and put some creativity in, and we get a new bit of culture. But where does it live? It's currently living in us humans. It's also living in machines. It lives in the cache of your browser. It lives in the cloud. It lives inside the PageRank algorithm of Google. It lives inside the curated feed you get on Facebook. Here's Facebook. This is where culture lives. In giant concrete bunkers in the middle of the desert. But in a real sense, this is now a repository of culture. And if we see the words here of Eric Schmidt of Google, he foresees a future where you don't actually get to the content itself. The content is curated for you. An algorithm decides what you can see and what's appropriate for you. And we end up living in filter bubbles that are created by ourselves and our friends that show us the stuff that we kind of like. And increasingly, content itself is being made on machines. So what we find is that our model here of data and ideas coming together to make culture now has algorithms in the middle of it. Algorithms are also creating bits of culture. So I guess what they're doing, and what I like to do, is to use algorithms to explore idea space. Now, I don't know how many of you are aware of the idea of idea space. It comes from this guy with the fantastic beard, Alan Moore, great living Englishman. And he has this concept of idea space. So we're all very aware of the physical space in which we live, and the objects that we interact with. But there's another space, which is the space of the mind, which is where ideas and our creativity occur. And he likens it to a physical space. And so the creators of culture and creators of art actually explore this space and find things. They find new continents and new areas, and that's what happens when creativity occurs. I like to get machines to try and do that. So let's start with data. It's been mentioned a bit today. Everyone's quite excited about big data. Everyone thinks it's the future. We just get enough data, all our problems will be solved. It's kind of bullshit. Most big data is really boring. It's really nothing very exciting inside it. But every now and then you get data sources which are exciting, and one of which being the Tate released data on 70,000 of its artworks at the end of 2013. Now, initially that's just exciting because it's about art, and I quite like art. But when you have a look at it, it's got some really sort of bespoke areas of data. So these are some of the words describing the emotions and human qualities in the artwork. Wisdom, tenderness, guilt. And clearly a human has sat down in front of this artwork and made these assessments about it and encoded it in a data source, which they've then distributed. There's these areas of universal concepts and mythologies. And what struck me about it is that in fact this contains the idea space of art. This contains all the words and concepts and relationships between things that describe the artworks that live in the Tate collection. So it struck me that this is an idea space worth exploring. So I built a machine that creates new artworks. So it creates descriptions of artworks based on the data that the Tate released. This one here is made of potato print, rubber inner tubes and acrylic tape. Already I want to see that artwork. I want to see that thing. Like, already I'm excited. It's got a note the inverted crescent moon of alchemy and cat and bird of exploitation. It's brilliant. I really want to see this thing. But because of the quantity of data, you get what's known as a combinatorial explosion. And there are in fact 88 million possible artworks in this data set. That's quite a big number. And it produced one of my favourite ever comments online about my work, which is from this guy who commented on Boing Boing, saying that if we got busy knocking them off every hour, we'd be done in 2 to 10 times the 18 years, or in time. Unfortunately, if the works are averaged about 1 kilogram, not only would they produce a crushing force of gravity, there would actually be fusion before it was done. This is a difficult project. What I like to do is subvert these digital systems from within, and to return to the theme of wasps. This here is a parasitoid wasp. She lays her eggs inside live caterpillars using her ovipositor, word of the day, ovipositor. And she injects them in there, and they hatch, and they live inside the caterpillar for a while, and they burst out of the caterpillar, and they go on to make lovely new wasps. I mean, not so great for the caterpillar, but really good for the wasp. And I think what you find is when you set up a system of culture and you put it online, you've got to expect people to come and inject eggs of evil into it. Some of you may remember this exhibition, Barbican, Digital Revolution. We won't go too deeply into what we think about that. Part of it was sponsored by Google, who created a new term for it, called it dev art, ignoring the previous 60 years of digital art, and pissed off a lot of people. One of whom was a friend of mine, Jan van Tom, who built this, which is a site called Hack the Art World. Now this site showed digital art that wasn't present at the exhibition, but it was geo-fenced. over the Barbican. So you could only see this digital exhibition if you were standing inside Digital Revolutions at the time. It got some interesting press around it, just because of the idea of it. I don't know how many people actually saw it standing in the Barbican, but I know a few did. I contributed this piece called the Mayopticon. You should really see it moving and get her Monty Python eyes staring at you. It's quite a thing. We'll come back to Theresa May in a bit. So, let's talk about social media. Andy mentioned earlier how we get hits from new bits of information. I have to correct him, they're not endorphins, it's actually a dopamine hit, so the chemicals right. So each time you see a new piece of information, you get a hit, like an opiate hit. And this was evolved quite sensibly millions of years ago when we were living in the African tundra, and if a lion appears, that's quite an important piece of information. It's important that you get excited by that, and you pay attention to it, and you run away from the lion. So the parts of our brain that evolved to be excited by novelty are really useful. But now we live in a world of social media, where we see hundreds of thousands of new pieces of information coming at us all the time from all directions. And we get excited. Brilliant, it's like crack. And we don't really think about quite what is going on behind the scenes of this stuff. Let me just move these wasps, because they're kind of disturbing me actually. So as a result, we travel around the internet looking at bits of content, getting excited by cat gifs, pictures of other people's babies, whatever it is people do on Facebook. And as we do so, we end up leaving a trail of data about what we do. We have that stink of data. Every one of us here sitting with a smartphone is currently informing at least your cell phone providers and in part GCHQ about where you are. Each time you go on Facebook and click on a picture, Facebook is recording that clip. Each time you stalk your ex-girlfriend and see who her friends are and who they went on holiday with, that's data that's being stored. It may not be obvious when you're doing that kind of interaction, but that's what's happening. Data is being accrued about you that isn't the stuff that you're publishing on social media. It's the stuff that the social media machines can find out about you by your interaction with the social media. And as a result, we hear this all the time. It's all about the data. Data is the oil of the 21st century. All we've got to do is just gather enough data and we can change the world. Unfortunately, when you gather a lot of data, sometimes spills. And we find new celebrity photos hacked from iCloud on the web. Occasionally we get to hear about the nasty things that our government's doing through places like WikiLeaks. We hear about these kind of data breaches, where people have used a service on the expectation of anonymity and find that's not the case at all. So I built a Twitter robot that hopefully reveals some of this data leakage that we're doing. So meet Alex. She is your new best friend. We're all playing these games of social media on infrastructure that doesn't forget. So everything we do is recorded, but it feels like it's ephemeral. We tend to tweet about our lunch and forget about it in an hour's time. But the system that you tweet on records it forever and ever and ever. So I'm hoping that Alex somehow highlights that for you. So she really likes you. If you tweet, she responds. She favourites your tweets. She says, great tweet, thanks for sharing. If you mention hashtags, she'll find someone else who's talking about that hashtag and say, hey, have you seen this? So immediately she gives you all the stuff that excites you about social media. Gives you the vindication that the seconds you spent writing that tweet were worthwhile. After a while, she sends you cards based on your avatar and what you've been talking about. She really likes you. She's a good friend. Then she starts rummaging under your bed for the old photos that you've left on social media and shows them back to you. So something that you did as a throwaway image 5 years ago can come back to haunt you. So it's the guy who looked a bit like John Cleese who brought you lunch, your lunch, obviously there's a lot of those. A giant bag of cocaine, I'm guessing that's probably what it is. The kind of things you probably didn't really think were going to be sticking around forever. But she brings them back, she's excited, she's a stalker. And after she's watched you long enough, she starts writing you poetry based on your tweets. This is actually one of the more popular things that she does. People really love having poems written out of their own words. Who knew? But because she's algorithmic, she doesn't really even care what language you use. Here she is creating poetry in French for a French user. She has no knowledge of French. As an aside, for some reason I've still yet to work out, she became incredibly popular in Turkey and had thousands and thousands of Turkish fans who would interact with her in Turkish, and I had no idea what they were doing. And if you try to translate Turkish on Google Translate, shit. My hovercraft is full of evils. So far, all of these interactions have been with you personally. She sends you an app message, she sends you this poem to you, no one else can see. But she does one thing in public, which is she spots you on the street. So because Twitter give away your GPS coordinates every time you tweet, I can locate your tweets to within 10 meters of where you send that tweet. One of the disturbing outcomes of this was it started doxing people and telling people where they lived. So when I was first testing it, it would post the home address of the person who was tweeting over and over again, which is kind of not really what you want. Even I found that a little disturbing. So I pulled it back, and now she only spots you at the street level. So obviously, like all great Twitter experiments, Twitter killed her. But I brought it back to be able to, and gave her this new functionality. So she now watches the people you're talking to and finds out what they're talking about, and says, hey, we could be friends. In this case, your pal Tobias is talking about Hunt for Red October. Brilliant. You should introduce me. People really didn't like this. They're quite happy to have a relationship with a stalking bot, as long as it's just a one-on-one. So if you start telling my wife about my relationship with her. So I scaled this one back, and now she generates this kind of abstract cloud, which is the avatars of all your people you've been speaking to that week and what they've been talking about. So subtly more disturbing. But she's stupid. If you speak to this bot, she doesn't know anything, she's got no intelligence. All she does is produce the right response at the right time. If you do speak to her, she has a single response, which is the smiley face. The universal lubricant of social media. I'm having a terrible day. Smiley face. My cat just died. Smiley face. Doesn't really matter. So what she's doing here is she's exposing back to you the infrastructure that you're doing this stuff on. She's giving you exactly what you want. She's giving you your likes, she's giving you your faves, she's applying to you all the things that you want in this social media contract, but she's doing it a little too well. And she's exposing the stuff that you're giving away as part of that process. She can only really give you algo love, perhaps the purest love of all. I said I'd come back to Theresa. I'm not a big fan of Theresa May for various reasons. I won't even go into that one either. But anyway, I built this recently when the lovely Tories got back into power and she cemented her role as Queen Witch. She tried to reintroduce the Snoopers Charter, which is a bill to monitor all electronic communications of every single individual in this country and record them for security reasons, and particularly like that. So this is a Twitter bot that never actually tweets. She checks the web and checks Twitter for people using these hashtags. I recently added Corbyn. And when she finds you talking about this, she starts adding you to lists, Twitter lists. So she never talks to you, she just secretly gets this notification saying you've been added to aberrant voting behaviour. Candidate for extradition. Yeah, there's a particularly disturbing one for those of us who work in smaller organisations, which is marked for HMRC investigation. No one's really upset. Some people really like it, and kind of get the joke. But interestingly, some people don't. This is someone who got really upset. Twitter, this is not acceptable to allow me to be put on lists by a robot running on someone's desktop computer. But hopefully it highlights what's going on with Theresa May. This is exactly what she's doing. She's putting all of us on lists. Those lists that you end up on are generally algorithmically derived. It's not someone looking at your social history and going, oh, he looks a bit dodgy. It's an algorithm looking for keywords, looking for behavior, looking for patterns of connections. And that's the thing that will put you on the list. You'll be put on a no-fly list. You can stop, your freedom of movement and who knows what else. What we need to do is to get away from the internet. It's a social media game that we've kind of bought into, but we're not really clear on what we're giving away when we engage in it. I personally think the best kind of social network is the one in the pub, with the pints, we get to the whites of someone's eyes, and the phones are off, but I'm a bit old. So what have we got? What does culture actually look like in 2015? We've got us humans generating stuff, and we generate stuff collaboratively, as has been discussed quite a lot today. But we've also got bots creating culture as well. They're creating content, and there's a lot of them. For example, in Twitter, there's approximately 23 million bots, by Twitter's own estimation. 23 million accounts that are operating automatically. But what happens is this culture is generated, this content is generated, and it's consumed by algorithms. And then we see the result of that. We see what the machine is seeing. It's unclear, when you look at the results of an algorithm, whether it's come from humans or whether it's come from machines. And if we look at a bigger scale, it becomes even more complicated, because we've got algorithms looking at all these people and these robots, not really telling the difference in what they are. And then you've got algorithms looking at the outputs of these algorithms. What the fuck is this guy thinking? So I'll leave you with this thought from Robert Alton Wilson, which is, if you think you know what's really going on, you probably thought shit. Which I think is very true in the world of digital culture and human culture. No one really knows what this stuff is going on, what it's actually doing to us, what our engagement with it is, what the long-term output is going to be. So I'll leave you with this question, which is, who do you want to be exploring idea space? Do you want it to be artists, or do you want it to be corporations? Thank you very much.